I'm Rob, and I'm a gambling addict in recovery. I made my last bet November the 12th, 2022, and I started this channel to spread the message that gambling addiction is real, but so is recovery. At the time of recording this, we've actually recorded over 130 different interviews of people struggling and recovering from gambling addiction. Today, I want to share some of the most powerful moments from those interviews, and we can call this the ultimate compilation of gambling addiction stories.
I started gambling when I was 16. One of my teachers was out for a couple weeks, and we had a substitute teacher in school. A couple of my friends and someone had a bookie. We were placing group bets for $20, on NBA games. And quickly after that, I got my own book from a bookie, and then in college had multiple bookies. When I turned 21, it was legal in PA a few months after, and it quickly went downhill once it was legal. There was no, before it was halftime bets, full game bets. When it became legal, it was same game parlays, micro bets, a lot of just the the amount of action that comes at you. And if you are an addict, it's so unfavorable. You can't, it's nonstop. You can't get away from it. While in college, while I did use, legal DraftKings, FanDuel, when I ran out of money, I would use bookies because they give you a credit. I would say in college, I probably owed someone $1,000 every week. It was constant, and I didn't know I didn't know I had an addiction. I would have told someone I have no mental health problems, no issues. That was hindsight farthest from the truth. And yeah, I think after college, it increasingly got worse. The free bets became more because I was losing more. The boost became more. It was at a point that I looked at, if I don't use a boost, I'm wasting my money. And, that's a very toxic way to think.
I think a lot of people get to that point though.
Yeah,
It's like, if I'm not doing these free bets, like I'm leaving money on the table.
exactly. And so DraftKings, FanDuel, there would be mornings I would wake up and write down every single boost, every single free bet, and make sure, how can I utilize all of them by the day's over? And, they know how to keep you in the game, and whether I had money or not, they kept me in the game. I don't know if it's legal now to gamble on a credit card in PA.
It really depends on the day.
Yeah, so I don't, but I know when I was actively gambling, I
Yeah.
maxed a bunch of credit cards out.
Mm.
They never ask you, why do you have 3 credit cards in a month? They want your money, and I was giving them all of my money, but more importantly, all of my time.
But I imagine that the feeling was a lot different between gambling when you were 16 in
Oh,
class versus
yeah,
24.
yeah.
Can we dive into that feeling? Like, what did it feel like when you were doing it with your friends right in the beginning?
It became like, it was such a thrill. It was fun. It was low amounts of money. I mean, now I know the money isn't, it's not about the money. Then it was a fun thing to do. We were, would talk about the games, would argue about like what we should take, and then as a group all do it. And it was, at that time it was fun. When I was gambling in pharmacy school, I was trying to become a millionaire. I thought, this is my way to pay student loans. This is my way to get rich. And I can do it all the time. Like, I'll find a way to make money while I was tens of $1,000s in the hole.
Yeah.
But that thinking, like, even at the time, if you asked me then, how are you up or down? I would have been like about even. When I knew I was totally down, but just the gambling mindset
So if
is,
you're down that much, like, because the people that watch this kind of podcast, right? Some of them can relate to exactly what we're talking about. Other people are just genuinely like curious. They're like,
Mhm.
how do you get addicted to losing money? What's wrong with you? Why didn't you just stop? Like, if you have 8 years of proof at this point that you're down money, why do you keep having the thought of like, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire from this?
The thrill,
Mm.
it's really not about like I said earlier, it's not about the money, which is a very hard concept to understand, but it's about the way gambling makes you feel.
Mm.
And, there's a thrill of emotions. You're on a roller coaster for a couple hours if you're watching the game. I don't know, they promise you such false hope, all the ads.
Mm.
I think now they have one that like you're a thrillionaire,
That's
like,
the worst.
yeah. I think the ads, the false hope, it puts you in such a blind spot. I mean, now, talking about it now, I'm over a year sober from gambling. So my thoughts and feelings on it now are completely different than
Right.
it was at the time, as they should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that false hope that I'm one bet away, like one parlay, like anything, like they keep you in the game, there was times that toward the end, I ran out of money. I had my parents watching my money because I went to them and said, I can't hold $1. And I could ask them, I ran out of money. Can I have a free bet? And they would give me money.
Really?
So,
You had like a VIP host at the time?
I didn't have a host. I did it strictly through just the message board on DraftKings and FanDuel.
Got it.
So I was in contact with multiple hosts, but I never had one myself. I told myself, oh, I'm not going to get to that point when it didn't matter. I was way past the point. I was about a year and a half into working on a 6-figure salary. I was about 50 grand in debt. I could just feel all the walls caving in very, very quickly. I knew I had a problem when I was probably at Westchester. I think I have a video on my phone of me telling myself I have an addiction. And then I would push that thought completely out of my head.
This was undergrad. This is when you were like 20. 21.
Yeah. So, before, like years prior, I knew I had an issue, but just the shame and the guilt of the driving force behind the addiction just was too much to bear. And then the admission to my parents actually came when I was down the shore with all my friends. We went out for a night, a normal night, drinking, having fun. And when we got back, everyone went to bed, and I went to my garage and was just drinking still until 4 a.m. And eventually my mom came down and asked, what's going on? Like, what are you doing? And for some reason, thank God, I don't know why, I just told her. I told her, like, Mom, I think I have a problem with drinking and gambling. And, hindsight, it was really the gambling that was the driving force of all my problems. That was a tough night. My dad came down, and I didn't want to tell him, but just because, the guilt, the shame, the admitting that the last 10 years of my life was essentially based on a lot of lies, was tough. But that conversation helped me turn my life around. It took months later to get sober from gambling, but that admission is a night I'll always remember. And I mean, thank God it happened. I still don't know why I decided that was the moment to tell them, but I was just so backed against the wall. I mean, they were going to find out sooner or later. So I'd like to say I admitted it to them. It was coming out in the next month, 2 months. It was,
Understood.
it was, the walls were caving.
Now, before we started recording, you told me that following that night, you were able to just give up alcohol. That was it, right then and there, that conversation. But as you just said, the gambling took a few more months. Take me into the mindset of, like, you have this big emotionally driven conversation, and then is it a day later that you're back to the gambling? A week later? Like, do you remember?
Yeah, so that was in June of 2024. I never touched alcohol ever again. For some reason, I think the way that I was addicted to the two substances were completely different. For alcohol, when I started drinking, I wasn't stopping for the night. I was I was going hard, but for the gambling, I just couldn't actually stop. And I think, I said to you earlier, like I think now I could go out and have a couple beers and I would be fine because I'm not gambling. But the gambling was so bad that when I was drinking, it was just to get away. It was like I have 6, 7 hours that I don't have to think about the gambling and all the problems it's causing. So the way I was addicted to those two things were very different. But yeah, for the gambling, I mean, the next day I regretted that I even told them about the gambling because I wanted to gamble. Like a gambling addict wants to gamble. And a couple days later, maybe 2, 3 days, that I would place a bet, I would delete the app, or I would wait till I was going out of the house, because my parents didn't really know how to navigate a gambling addiction. I mean, 99% of the world doesn't. You have to have a lot of skills to be equipped to deal with someone who's addicted to gambling. So, yeah, I mean, finding recovery was a journey for gambling, but for alcohol, it was like that. Like I could see how much alcohol was an issue when I used it. I was still telling myself I can gamble my way out of this.
And how can my story begin before I was born? Well, my dad was a gambler. My dad's preferred game was Blackjack, and he actually gambled away the life savings that he and my mom had accrued up to that point, no less on their honeymoon. The life savings, they were meant for moving to America. At that time, they had my sister, and my sister is 8 years older than I am. So she was born in South Korea. They had to leave her there because they couldn't afford bringing the entire family over. So my mom and dad came to America in the 70s. After I was born, he would often leave the house for weeks at a time, and my mom would lie and say that he was on business trips. But then around the time I was like 9 years old, he would just take me to Atlantic City. And he would take me and my mother, and sometimes he would leave me in arcades. He would literally give me a $20 bill to go cash out and get quarters. And back then, this is like 1993, 92, even around that time. So that went a long way, and I would play those arcade games for hours, really. But then when the quarters ran out, it's not like my dad was there rooting me on, waiting for me. And I would have to go on the casino floors and look for him. There were many instances in which, like, the casino floor bosses would kick me off because they could see that I'm quite obviously a minor. And so even back then, I had this very weird association with gambling, because I worship my dad despite all of his shortcomings. Because at that age, it's what you do, is like you worship your parents for the most part, I think. But at the same time, I knew something was wrong with what was going on, and it really hit the fan when I was in 6th grade, going in the summer into 7th grade. He had gambled away so much of our savings again, to the point where we had to sell a very nice home in Nassau County in Long Island. We had a pool in the backyard, and and throughout all that time, I had a pretty precocious childhood. They not only sold the house, they sold their business as well. Wow. They had like a corner store in Brooklyn, wildly successful. That's why we had a house in Long Island. And they like guilt tripped me into thinking that that's what it was when I was younger. But the truth was that he had basically taken so many markers, and he had gambled away so much of our savings that we really couldn't afford it, and he was in such debt. Another quick thing that I should definitely mention is part of my story. It's, mental health is not in traditional Korean, their scope of thinking. I think it's better now, but I'm 42 for context, so I'm not that young. And I think my parents were more old school. So, I remember one time, because I had a very troubled childhood. I was had various parts of from like the age of like 12 to about 28. I was in juvenile detention, group home, county jail, just various facilities and institutions. Oh, I was in that mental hospital in Paramus, New Jersey. So I had issues, and I remember one time I did like this family therapy session, and at the end of it, my sister asked. My sister's an advocate for me. Without her, I wouldn't be here today. She asked me, "How was it, Ben? Did you like it?" And I said yes in front of my parents. And I was like, "I love it. I want to do it again." And my dad said to me, "I can't see the therapist again, and I don't want to see a therapist, and I can't see them because if I keep seeing them, I'll drive him crazy." That's what he told me.
Hmm.
I'll drive him crazy if I keep seeing him.
Wow. So gambling starts to play a bigger role in your life as time would go on. You know, at the time you're 12 and 13. How's the gambling between, you know, say the next 5, 10 years?
So, really, there were these pockets of gambling because I was getting into a bunch of other nonsense that led to those aforementioned institutions. You know, just petty stuff like shoplifting or whatever, things that would fall in the category of criminal mischief. I was young and dumb and under 16. But by the time I was like 18, 19, 20, that's around the time that Chris Moneymaker and the WSOP craze hit, and everybody and their mama were playing home games. Everybody was buying the little suitcase of chips, the metal case. And again, ego, skill, the ability to lie, the ability to read people, the ability to like blood pressure down when most people would get anxious and nervous. I was really good at poker. So fast forward to this WSOP craze, I'm thinking, hey, I got this. I can make so much money doing this. But what I was saying is, I leveraged all that education into a career in education. I was making a lot of money off the books, cash from Korean parents who wanted their kids to be privately tutored, and also at the after school academy at which I had learned all those years. And hey, I had charisma. I was young. I was pretty handsome. And I won over a lot of people, but I was living a lie because behind the scenes, I was on Ultimate Bet. I was on Party Poker, Poker Stars. I would play for about an hour at like three tables, right? And with all the odds and all the pot odds and all the math and all the calculations at hand, variance and all that jazz. One bad hand, one bad beat, tilting, you know, and they start bluffing. Lose all the money? Okay, no problem. I'll just deposit more. Oh, lost all that? Let me start stealing money out of my boss's wallet at work and going to Bank of America and depositing it so I can go gamble again. Like, just absurd behavior. I'm not going to get into the weeds or details about my now ex-wife. And I have 2 daughters as well who are estranged. They don't want to have anything to do with me. And I don't blame them because the only version of me that they know is the one that I've talked about thus far. But anyway, yes, it's now, fast forward, it's now 2007. I'm in a relationship. I'm basically engaged. We would get married in 2008, but in 2007, I became power of attorney for my then fiance's grandmother. I was gambling on and off, but nothing serious. I would, like, for example, I would go to AC and blow a paycheck, but it wasn't like I was, leaving all the time, etc. And so I was smoking weed though very heavily at the time. And this is another facet of my story. It's like very indicative of how wildly immature and insecure I was. Because this is another thing that I did was like I forged this identity of being the guy who's like really knowledgeable about weed and knows how to roll a blunt and can get you weed. And it's ridiculous in hindsight. But anyway, I didn't have any money one day and I wanted weed. And when I became power of attorney, our Chase accounts got linked, and lo and behold, like I had a debit card. And one day, I just withdrew money, $400 to get an ounce of weed. Justified it to the high heavens. Oh, I take care of her finances. Oh, I take care of her. Oh, I took her out to Applebee's. Oh, literally, this is what I'm telling myself in my head to justify this and ignore the lie of and the shame of what I was really doing. And then it snowballed very shortly thereafter. And mind you, this whole time, I was doing every other like gambling related thing. Like I was doing fantasy sports, all that stuff. Anything that was available, I was doing pretty much in the cultural zeitgeist. And essentially, That $400, I mean, I can get into many, many, many details, but let's just say from 2007 to 2015, that $400 rose to six figures, and not just like 100,000, but like 600,000, 700,000. I wiped out this poor woman's pension account. I lied through my teeth and told my then wife that her grandma would have to live in like a hospice, like a nursing home, where like a death sentence nursing home, as she was creeping into Alzheimer's, because we couldn't afford the nice assisted living center. That's how degenerate, despicable I was. I couldn't even be honest then. You know why? Because I still had some money left. I could still gamble. I could still escape from all that. Still had a few thousand left. And what happened when that dried out? I had a mental, nervous breakdown. Was it real? Sure, but I also had it because I could garner some sympathy. I had to confess. I never got caught. Now it's time to confess because I ran out of money. But I put it under the guise that, hey, I need mental health help. I have this addiction issue, which was true, but the point was that I didn't confess because I honestly came to terms with my powerlessness over gambling, or because I really wanted to be honest. It was still self-serving. And the kind of like the theme of my addiction is that my moral center and my values go out the window. When I'm in active addiction, I am a monster. I am a different version of myself. Absolutely. 1 year after I get kicked out in 2015, and it's now the summer of 2016, I get arrested, go to county jail, and I didn't learn my lesson. I played poker. Oh my gosh, talk about degenerate gambling. In prison, that's some of the most degenerate gambling I've ever seen. And we played games like Little Red that had like 7 wild cards, just like the most ridiculous stuff. And I was gambling every day. And recovery, sobriety, these things were not on my radar whatsoever. And mind you, like I just told you that this is from 2015 to 2016. I went to Gamblers Anonymous in 2015. I went to Gamblers Anonymous about a month after I got kicked out of my house. Why? So I could tell my wife at the time, hey, I'm going to Gamblers Anonymous. I'm recovering. I'm doing the right thing. Take me back. So it was all for the wrong reasons. I really wasn't in it to really care about myself or admit that I still thought, I could handle this. I'm smart enough. I just had to do it more controlled.
If any of these are sounding like something that you can relate to, consider subscribing to the channel. We work hard every single day to spread the message that gambling addiction is real, but so is recovery. And hopefully by being here, you can learn from our experiences and don't go down the same path.
I think I was seeking validation. I was adrenaline, connection with other people. People could say like, oh, you're in college. Like that's, what, people do. And you're like, yeah, like I get it. And, I have no problem with people gambling and being around it now. I'm at that point. I just had to be honest with myself that, it was doing me so much damage. And it got to the point where it was like sad, what I was doing. Couple points on like college and fraternity culture. I mean, if I think about a good like metaphor comparison, it would be drinking. If I right now as a 26-year-old about to be 27 drank the way that I drank when I was 19 and 20 years old, I would immediately be given an intervention by the people around me, and I would be told to go and like get some help. But it's normal when it's in college because you're supposed to make mistakes in college. You're supposed to do all these things. So people are gambling in the same way that they're drinking in college. This is my assumption. And it's creating a situation where they are gambling in a way that someone with a gambling addiction would gamble. And maybe they're developing a gambling addiction at the same time, but it's not viewed as a problem because they're in college. Do you think that's fair?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think, just the culture of college and a fraternity just makes those behaviors, acceptable. And, me, I was in a fraternity, like I promise, like whoever's like listening and like thinks that this doesn't, like I was that kid, like I was that guy that didn't think that this applied to me. I would be the one who would be listening to this podcast back in college and laughing at it.
Yep.
If I'm going to be honest.
Yep.
And
you know, and maybe I wouldn't be putting those comments on. I
That's
wouldn't take
exactly what I thought about myself.
I wouldn't take it that far, but you know, I was that kid that didn't think that this, you know, applied to me. You know, I had too much pride. You know, I thought I was on top of the world, and you know, I had to learn that, you know, the hard way. It was for the longest time. It was that's it. Like I just thought that I had all the answers, and I knew my way was the right way. And that was with gambling. That was with drinking. You know, I'm also sober. I don't drink. Or anything like that. So I never thought that I would get to the place that I got to, and it would get so dark how it got to. It just shows that this can happen to anyone. You know, it's just addiction does not discriminate. You know, it doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what you look like. It happens, and you eventually, and it's hard because gambling is not a substance that you put into your body. It's hard to measure. Like, when does it become a problem? Like, yeah, if you go to GA, they read you the 20 questions. It can kind of help you come to that conclusion if you're a compulsive gambler. But at the end of the day, you know, you have to come to that decision. Like, is it, you know, how is it really affecting my life? You know, and there's so many people who are gambling that probably wish that they didn't do it, but they do it. And, you know, maybe it's not, you know, a problem like yet, or, you know, losing enough money where they're facing, you know, severe financial consequences or lost relationships or, you know, divorce, whatever it may be. But it's like, is it worth it? Like, is it worth continuing to do this behavior for maybe the not so major consequences? Because I think it's like inevitable, you know, at some point it's gonna start to become not a choice. Because like, why do people say like, I'm done, and they just keep going, and they just keep going back if it's not addicting?
I know, man. I mean, the GA 20 questions, it's what I use. Like, if in the description of this video, they're literally going to be there. It's to help people figure out, hey, do I have a problem or do I not have a problem? But they're really subjective. Like, honestly, like, they're good questions. They capture the feeling well. But with alcohol, you could say, if I drink X number of drinks per week, I'm drinking at a moderate rate, I'm drinking at a severe rate. Like, there's a scale to it. Whereas gambling, like, it depends how much money you have as to how severe the bet sizes are, I guess. But it's so subjective to decide, do I have a gambling problem or not, that I believe this number is correct. 90% of people with a gambling addiction do not know that they have an addiction, or do not like confront the addiction. They just live in denial and keep going. Yeah. Which I think that's hard to measure. So I don't remember where I pulled that number from. Don't quote me.
It makes sense.
Yeah. It's just like, what is a gambling addiction? And it's so unique to you.
Yeah. It's so unique to you. And you, at the end of the day, you just have to come to that decision if you want to classify yourself with that as having a gambling addiction. Right. And I think a lot of people have a problem with that, because putting a label to yourself like that is, you know, kind of extreme. You know, people, you know, and I know you are very open about it, of course. And, you know, I'm very open about it. You know, I tell my story. Hence, you know, why I'm sharing my story here is because I'm not, you know, embarrassed about it. You know, I have a problem that I had a problem, or arguably I still have a problem, because I know that I can't gamble. I admitted to it, and I'm getting better, and I got better. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with having a problem that you want to face and get better at. You know, I found as I got time, you know, when things got really bad for me, I was embarrassed. I was worried about my reputation, what other people would think about me. I ended up going to treatment. You know, I cared so much like about my reputation and what other people would think about me. That's how I lived. I just wanted to please other people. I wanted to be well liked. You know, admitting that I had a problem that was greater beyond myself was so hard for me to admit that. But it got to the point where I didn't like care anymore, that I realized that I had to get help. I couldn't do this on my own. I had to start trying different things to get better.
Before I start looking like I'm almost 30, I wanted to go undercover in a frat, so to speak. Not like they would be like, who's that guy? And I'd be like, oh, I rushed yesterday or something. Like, not like that, but like, you know, spend a couple days in a fraternity house, see what it's like, see what's going on. I get rejected every time, because apparently it's like, you know, if they're on camera gambling, it's the same as being on camera drinking, and it becomes a problem with the school's policies, XYZ. So maybe you could shed some perspective on what is a day in the life like as the sports betting guy in the fraternity?
Yeah. Well, I guess I wouldn't say I was the sports betting guy. I would say 95% of the fraternity were sports betting guys. I was just part of the pack, and I did it at higher levels than most people. And I didn't stop. You know, there was people that were able to stop beyond their means, people are able, not that and this is not something that's impossible, I think, to do in moderation and to do socially. But again, I always speak from my experience. I just wasn't able to do it. But, a day in the life was just waking up, and that was the first thing that was on my mind, is what my bets were going to be for that day. Scrolling through all my options, doing whatever research that, I thought was going to give me the best chance. A lot of the times it was trying to save my ass from the week before, figuring out how I could accumulate money that was separate from what was being funded, by my parents, because, I wasn't financially independent at that time, as a lot of college students aren't, because I think that was something that, I found, again, attractive to me, was having side money that wasn't like traceable. And mainly like what I would do with that side money was whether to, buy drugs, buy weed, and have money to gamble. Money, things that my parents wouldn't approve of giving me money for.
Right.
So that was a huge goal with my gambling money, was to be able to do things that, again, even like buy things that my parents, wouldn't buy for me. And, I was always able to, whether it was money in like my Venmo account, Cash App, I got to a point where I was making Venmo accounts, because I got banned from Venmo at one point. I got banned from Venmo in high school, I'm pretty sure. I've been banned. I still am not on the app.
I'm banned on Cash App.
You're banned on, yeah, I'm still not on the app. So yeah, that's a funny conversation anytime someone asks me to Venmo them. Just Zelle me. But yeah, I mean, it was just the only thing that, it just occupied, in classes, I was, watching whatever game was on. And, and of course, I hear it all the time, I started betting on sports in different countries. It was an all, in the midst of my addiction, it was an all day event of waking up, placing my bets, following them, and feeling that rush all throughout the day. It was like I was like high all day from that rush, and that's what I was, seeking. Going to bed late, whether I was up or down, dependent, that was on my mood. Being on my phone, live betting on whatever was on.
Yeah.
It was a whole day event.
And was it like something that your frat brothers were like motivating you to continue doing? Were they approving of the behavior? Were they supportive, accepting? Like, what was the feeling as the pack, as you say? I
left school for the first time due to gambling, losing significant amount of money that I didn't have. Eventually I got pulled from a timeline. This was like 2019. I went to an outpatient center back at home. My family lives in Maryland, so somewhere close by. I knew the gambling was a problem. I knew what I was doing was not good. But I also had like a drinking problem. I had a drug problem. And, I knew specifically like with the drugs that I was using and the gambling, like those were like the main issues. I definitely, like how you said, looking back at my drinking in college, like that could have been classified as me being a problem drinker, of course. But I just never thought that like sobriety was going to be my life. Like, sure. I just wanted to go to this outpatient program, do what I had to do, please my parents, get through it. I ended up being there for 10 months. So I finished around summer of 2020, but my mindset wasn't in the right place. Like I wasn't doing it for myself yet. Like that's like one of the biggest messages that I give to other people who are trying to get better is like, why are you doing it? Are you doing it to please mom and dad? Right. Or are you actually doing it or friends or your reputation? Or are you actually doing it for yourself?
Whatever I was losing at the sports book, I was also losing it with the bookie in LA, because if I was putting in a bet,
you're doubling it.
Yeah, of course. Because I thought I was going to win.
Yeah.
But there was this one weekend I'll never forget that, I went to Vegas with a certain amount of money, and the amount of money was supposed to last me the whole weekend. So we got there on a Friday morning, and I was okay, I'll play a little bit Friday, play a little bit Saturday, play a little bit Sunday, and then Monday when we go home, whatever. If I lost the money, I lost the money. But I'm not taking out anymore.
And you don't have to share the amount, but this amount of money, this is like, if a normal person heard this amount of money, what would they think?
Okay, I'm going to just say this. It was 50 grand. The money, and we've discussed this offline and we discussed this in our meetings and stuff too. The money is all relative, right? Like I lost large sums of money high six figures. I've lost millions of dollars in totality of my gambling career because I had access to it. When my gambling career started in college, if I lost $1,000 in a week, I thought that that was the equivalent of losing $1 million because that's really what I had access to. If I had access to a bank account with $100 million at any point in my gambling career, I would have lost $100 million. I probably would have lost $102 million. So the money, it's large sums. It's a lot of money. And I'll also say I'm currently in high six figures debt. I'm on a payment plan with all of my creditors, and I'm on a payment plan that's going to take a very long time, years and years and years to pay back everyone. But yeah, that particular weekend, I lost 50 grand. I went with 50 grand cash. It was supposed to last me all weekend. And as a compulsive gambler, we know now that I have no control once I start. And this idea that I could pace myself or that I'm going to stretch this money out through the whole weekend is virtually impossible, because emotionally, once I start gambling, I'm hijacked and I can't control myself. And so we get there, and I wind up losing like $49,400 that Friday night. We were there with a bunch of friends, and we went out to a nightclub, and we were having a good time. And the whole entire time I was just thinking about, I can't believe I just lost all of this money that I was supposed to play with all weekend. How am I going to gamble the rest of the weekend? I have no money left. I had $600 left, but how am I going to gamble the rest of the weekend? I'm going to have to take out more money tomorrow. I'm going to have to put cash advances on credit cards, and like, the insanity has already started, and I'm not enjoying whatever fun time all my friends are having there. We left. It was like 5 a.m. I'm with my best friend Dean and my best friend Sam, and I say to them, I'm like, guys, like, I'm going to try and run this 600 up real quick. And they're both looking at me like, it's 5 a.m. Like, let's go to bed, play tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm either going to lose this $600 in 5 minutes, or we're going to run it up. And sat down at a blackjack table, turned that $600 into $35,000 in like literally a half hour.
And what are you feeling when that happens? Like, do you feel like I figured it out? Like it's finally, I was due, it's coming back to me. Like, what's the thought?
You're high. You're like, you think you're the man. You think that you've figured it out. You think that whole idea in your head of sometimes you need to just dig a little deeper to get out of the hole. Like, that whole gambler's fallacy tape starts playing out in your mind. You can't sleep, right? Yeah, how am I going to go to sleep after this? So any sleep that you get is minimal. And then you're just thinking about how I'm going to turn that 35,000 into 100,000 on Saturday. And then by Sunday, it's going to be 200,000. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to go home with this money, and then I'm going to pay off this bookie, and I'm going to pay that, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to buy my girlfriend that. Like, all of these delusions start really coming into play. And in my gambling career, I had a lot of big wins, but it was never enough. And you win 100, it should be 1,000. You win 1,000, it should be 10, 100, 100,000 should be 1 million. And that tape just continues to go on and on and on. And so I wound up losing all my money on Saturday and taking out money on my credit cards and cash advancing and Zelle me this, I'll pay you back when we get to LA, and the whole kit and caboodle. I did that for so many years, bro. Like from 2017 till 2020, really. I was going to Vegas like once a month, twice a month, just doing the same thing over and over again.
Dude, it's like when you started telling the story, you're like, all right, this amount is supposed to last me the whole weekend. So like, that's one fixed mindset. All right, this is entertainment. I'm going to use this money so that I can spend it to enjoy. Then it's like, I have to run this 35 to 100 to 200. It's like, these things are at odds with each other. These are contradicting statements, but I think that's kind of exactly how the casino industry wants it, right? Like, they want people trying to earn more with supposed entertainment dollars.
There's somebody that I know who's a multi-billionaire, and he will go to the casino, and if he loses $500, he's done. And he's like, I just won't waste my money. And I like look at him, I'm like, why is the guy who's worth $3 billion playing $25 blackjack hands, and me, who's worth nothing, playing financially playing $5,000, $10,000 blackjack hands. But that's what, as a compulsive gambler and as an addict, that's where the delusion starts to really come into play. And that's where the disease starts to lie to you and tell you things. And when you're a compulsive gambler, you're lying so much to everyone around you, but really to yourself. It becomes really dangerous because the voice that's lying to you is your own voice. So then you start to believe it. And then you get stuck in the cycle, and you wake up one day and you're like, holy shit, like my life's a mess. The destruction that gambling causes, in my opinion, is far greater than sometimes the destruction that alcohol and drugs can cause. I was never suicidal. I didn't, there were points in my drug and alcohol use where I was like, if I don't wake up tomorrow, like I don't care. But it was never at a point of, I want to end my life. And the gambling brought me to the point where I was like, I don't see another way out of this unless I end my life. Or like I was having like these like daydreams of like where I would run away to, and I'll just go run away to the middle of like Oklahoma and get a job flipping burgers and just, you know, have a burner phone and only talk to my fiance, and, you know, she'll understand and I'll send them money every month and whatever, like these crazy things. Or I'd have these crazy thoughts of like walking to 7-Eleven in the morning to get my coffee, and I'd see a truck coming down First Avenue, and I would just stand there and be like, I hope this truck swerves and hops the curb and runs me over right now. And that was like the last 3 months before I went down to Gamblers Anonymous for the last time, you know, and that never happened from drug and alcohol use. And I was an Oxycontin user, I was a cocaine user, I was, you know, gambling really is for me the scariest one out of all of them. I have a great message that's I just lived. So this past week I was in Mexico with my fiance, my son, my 2-year-old son. We went to Mexico, the same exact place, when Mia was pregnant on her baby moon. I was not present that whole entire trip when she was pregnant because I was gambling. And this trip I was 100% sober, 100% not gambling. And I was just able to like relax and be present for every single moment and enjoy breakfast with her, enjoy lunch with her, enjoy the in-betweens at the beach or whatever, enjoy dinner. Like the baby would go down for a nap. I took a nap. Like I was able to nap. I wasn't sweating any games or anything. And I came home and, you know, Mia said to me, she was like, that was the best vacation I ever had with you. She's like, we really needed that. And I was like, wow. Just because, and I know, like, I didn't say this to her, but I know that it was the best vacation because I wasn't betting.
Right.
And I was present.
What was a day like when you were the most active in your addiction?
Yeah. I guess, you know, there was a gap of time between like February of 22 and then November of 22 when I made the last bet. So that gap of time, I didn't really gamble. So I guess the worst parts of the addiction, other than that last day, were probably back in February of 2022, maybe January. And what a day would kind of be like was I would wake up, and in the morning I would check my phone and I would see like, hey, am I up or down money from what I bet on before I went to sleep last night? And a lot of people I've actually gotten comments in the past like, how did you fall asleep when you were gambling? You're not a real gambler. You don't care enough. But like, I was gambling so much that it was kind of just like background noise, like a constant buzz that I always had something on. And so it wasn't abnormal for me to wake up to news that I either won or lost money. Then I would either, if I was winning, feel like, all right, pressure's off. I can enjoy today, play a little bit of casino games, you know, play some slots, play some roulette, something like that. Or if I was down money, I had to go and chase to win that back. Like almost instantly as I woke up. So say it was a weekend, I would wake up and I would check on what games were coming up for the NFL. In between that time that I woke up and that game, I'd play some blackjack, I'd read some predictions about the games that were coming up. Then I would watch all the games. I would bet on them from like 1 to, I don't know, 7 when the first 2 slates of games would end. I would bet on NBA games and then the Sunday night game. And it would kind of just be like from the moment that I woke up until I went to sleep, something I was gambling on. And either I was frustrated because I was losing and I was like irritated and angry with everyone around me because I was in a bad mood about it, or I was on the top of the world because I was winning and I wanted to win more and more and more, because to me, it felt like if I won, that was me proving that I was good at this thing. And then I'd place some bets and go to bed.
When you were winning,
Mm.
did you really think like, oh, I have this insane strategy that nobody else has, and I can totally beat this, and I'm superior, like I'm totally gonna get this, like this is my thing?
I mean,
Or
yeah, kind of like in the beginning, yes. Like when I was first starting, when I didn't have this giant like backlog of losses to remember, I did kind of have that belief. Like if I was winning, oh, I'm getting good at this. I figured it out. I have some system. I know this team so well. I know this particular player so well. Like there was that like ego behind it. Like I know this really well. I'm doing well with it. But by the end, when I would win, it was this weird sense of like not even pride or being proud. It was like this was what was supposed to happen. And anytime I lost, it was like an intense frustration. Like, why am I losing? I should have figured this out by now. But winning became an expectation, even though I wasn't winning nearly as much as I was losing, which created just kind of like this endless loop of no win was ever big enough to satisfy, but the losses required you to go and get them back. So you kept chasing, looking for that big win that would do it, but it never came. And then you would chase your losses, obviously, because you couldn't give up.
I mean, to me, that sounds like pretty exhausting. Like, just
Yeah.
always thinking about, like, oh, what's next? Or what do I have money placed on right now? What do I have to be watching? Like, I'm tired, like, thinking about it. Like, that sounds
Yeah.
really tiring.
I think a pretty common thing for people who have a gambling addiction is an impact on their sleep. Either you are staying up late into the night gambling. It could be a mix of everything. It's not either. You could be staying up late, checking on your bets. You could be waking up in the middle of the night from either checking on your bets that you placed before you went to bed, or stress, bad dream, a nightmare or something. Waking up in the morning, if it's your constant preoccupation, but it's not your full-time job, you also have to balance that alongside actually working to sustain the rest of your life that you're kind of destroying by doing the gambling. So when I describe these events, a lot of times people will be like, well, how did you do all that? Where'd the money come from? Why do you have so much free time? This is all happening in line with going to school or working a job. You just do it all at the same time. And that's why a lot of people who get into recovery become really successful business owners, because you're used to this constant grind where you have to have something going on. You're used to juggling a lot. It's just that finally it's things that you're juggling that don't automatically ruin your life because you're doing them.
Yeah.
I gambled every day, basically for an average of 8 to 10 hours a day for 6 years. Now, there was the gap of time between February 8th of 2022 and November the 12th of 2022 where there was no gambling. I was going to meetings and I was trying to find recovery. It ended up with a relapse in the end, but I would say, yeah, about 6 years of just constant gambling. It got progressively worse, right? In the beginning, constant gambling meant, betting one game every night. It wasn't like a 24/7 thing, but by the end, your brain gets so cooked that you feel like you have to gamble to feel okay, and everything else in your life just doesn't quite do it. So when your brain gets used to this level of thrill that's like only given to you by putting an insane amount of money at risk, doing something that otherwise would have been fun to a normal person might feel like nothing. And so you feel like you get accustomed to this level of dopamine, this level of reaction in your life. And if you don't hit that level, you're not really living. So it actually feels you have to gamble to live. You're gambling during everything. And one thing that I think we shouldn't gloss over is like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be gambling during the shower? What does it mean to be gambling during class? And it might literally look like someone propping up their phone. This is something I did, opening up like the stock market and watching the stock go up and down like cent by cent, second by second on Robinhood, because you just placed a single date options contract. For those that don't know what that is, that's basically like a coin flip. Is it going to go up or is it going to go down? You got a couple hours to figure it out. The price can swing hundreds of percent, but once you hit zero, it's obviously zero. But so I would literally shower,
Yeah.
peek my head around the curtain and like look at the stock. I got one hand on one side, like, cleaning myself with soap, and then the other, like I'm like peeking out the side of the curtain to see, did the price of Nvidia go up 3 cents or down 3 cents?
Obviously, you had ups and downs throughout your addiction. I want to hear about like one day where it was really bad, where you were like, this is my rock bottom. This is horrible. I need to do something about this.
I feel like when I hear that question, like if I was talking to almost anyone else, I'd just point to like one of the last 2 days, right? So the day that I was in France and I spun away all the money on the toilet, or the day that I had the big relapse and put myself into debt for the next 6 months. But I feel like those are really obvious rock bottoms, right? Like, oh, okay, he hit this point and then he quit. I think like over the time that I was gambling, there were so many points that you could have called a rock bottom that I just picked myself up and tried again and again and again and again. It got progressively worse. But I think that one that jumps out to me is it's really like kind of encompasses this idea of like I could not quit even when I was ahead in a given session. And there was a time where the Knicks were playing the Timberwolves. I've told this story before, but I think it's like really encapsulates the rock bottom. That game happened the night after this big game by Gonzaga. I think it was versus UCLA in the March Madness tournament, where one of these players, I'll speak generally, he hit a buzzer beater, and it made my bet win, and it was not supposed to win. It looked like it was cooked. So I was up a lot, and I was like, I could take this money. I was away. I was in the Bahamas. I was like, I could, buy some nice things. I could enjoy this money. But instead, what I did was I walked straight down to the casino and I put in another parlay. When I would bet in the casinos, I would bet on my phone at the same time and usually double the bet. So I had the physical money in real life and then the digital money, which is also real life. And I took a parlay that included the Knicks to beat the Timberwolves. The Knicks were up by 20 points at halftime. I could have cashed out and had a surefire win of more money than I needed. I didn't cash out. I continued on that night, and then I watched the Knicks blow a 20-point lead to the Timberwolves. And people around me that heard that at the time, they were like, that's a bad beat, Rob. That's something that only happens once in a lifetime. But when you gamble every day, you see so many things like that happen that it becomes like this woe is me kind of attitude, and you have like a big rain cloud following over you, and you just kind of expect things to eventually go poorly. And that situation, it was like, people often say a gambling addiction is greed. You just couldn't stop. Why didn't you just stop? And to me, it's like, I had this insane action going. I can't let it go, even though I could have cashed it out for 95% of the value. Like the difference of the money stopped mattering. And that's why I would say it was a rock bottom point, is because it morphed from I want to get rich gambling to I need gambling to feel alive.
What happened on November the 12th of 2022?
Sure. So the last day that I gambled was November the 12th, 2022. And it was a day where I woke up in the morning after about 8 months clean from gambling, and I felt sad. I felt sorry for myself. It had been building up for a couple of weeks where I was just kind of going through the motions. I wasn't happy. I wasn't gambling, but I wasn't making any real tangible progress. I had just paid off some debts. I wasn't liking what I was doing. I wasn't feeling healthy. Like nothing felt good. And I used that as an excuse to say, hey, maybe gambling is the thing that was making you happy. Maybe everything else was the problem. Maybe if you go back and try it again, it'll be different. And we were actually together that day. We went out to lunch at a brewery in Philly, and I had bet on whatever the football game that was on, and the bet won. And then from that point, I got into an Uber and I went to a casino. The reason that I went to that casino is when I made that bet, I felt bad about it. I felt guilty and I tried to withdraw the money. But the particular site had a policy where if you made a bank deposit, you had to wait until it cleared before you could withdraw from that same deposit method. So I went to the casino because I said that's unacceptable. I'm going to go to the cashier's desk and I'm going to get a paper withdrawal right there. They're going to pay me out and I'm going to leave. They told me the same thing because that was the company policy and it was the same casino as it was the casino app. And now I was in a casino, 10 minutes bet free, 20 minutes bet free instead of 8 months. It was a 12-hour total gambling binge where I maxed out 3 different credit cards with cash advances. By the end of the day, I gambled everything away, but that really wasn't what got me to stop. What got me to actually stop gambling also happened that day. It was that I had all the money in my pocket as cash along with my phone. And when I went to grab my phone, the money fell out onto the floor. This was all of the money basically that I had taken out as cash advances. So I freaked out. There was like other people around. I didn't want them to see that I dropped money. I didn't want to forget some on the floor. It was a terrible situation, but I was confident that I had picked everything up and I was like hyperventilating. I was panicking. And then I stopped and I started to laugh to myself, like crazy person laugh. And the reason I was laughing is because I had this thought, throw the money back on the floor. Because if you throw the money back on the floor, the next person that walks into this room might pick it up and leave with it. They might enjoy the money. They might buy their kids something. They might put it into a savings account or, God forbid, invest it. But I knew that if I kept that money, I was going to go back out there and I was going to gamble everything away. I then proved myself correct. And that thought stuck with me. It is always going to go the same way if you gamble because you cannot stop once you start. So all of your wins, even in the short term, if you strung together some wins, eventually, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, next month, all wins are future losses. And that's what happened that day.
Actually, I've been gambling for about 10, 11 years already. I started when I was like in college. I was like 20, 21. That was when I first started. And at first it was like small bets here and there, taking a trip to the casino. I never thought it was like harmful or anything. You know, these were like small, you know, like bring, you know, a couple bucks with you, maybe $100. And then over time, your brain just get rewired to so many things like, oh, is this the only hobby I have now? You know what I mean? So you just enjoy that dopamine hit of winning. And then eventually over the years, you just kind of feel like it's not even about the winning no more. It was more about, you know, it's like a drug. You know what I mean? Like the drug just keeps calling you every day. Like, oh, if I could win $100, I could do this, I could do that. That was maybe in the beginning. But as you get bigger, you start to play like $500 bets, $1,000 bets, you know, $3,000 bets in one hand. You start to be like, damn, the more money, the stronger this drug feels, you know? So in the end, you just don't even think about, oh, like this is not even about money no more. You know, it's like a drug.
Well, how fast was that progression for you? So in the beginning, you're doing $100 bets, and that's like maybe bets between friends or something like that? Like, is that sports bets? Is that baccarat in the beginning? Like, what's it like?
So in the beginning, I was going to the casino.
Yeah.
This was when casinos was not even as it is today. You know, like now they push things and like ads and stuff like that, online casinos and whatnot. This was back then. You had to physically go to the casino, place bets. You know, Blackjack was my game of choice when I first started. It was really easy because in the beginning, I was like winning so easily, you know? I guess that's what they really say, like beginner's luck, Rob. You know what I mean? They always say like beginner's luck and whatnot. And then at one point, like I would go like a couple times a week. That couple times a week started to be like a couple times a day after years later. So that's how it started to continue to progress. And I started playing and it was like so easy to win and stuff like that. At that time, I was not addicted. But
were you going with friends like at this time still, or is it just yourself?
So in college, I was kind of going with a couple friends, you know, have a good time, you know, like on weekends, you just enjoy the time and whatnot. And then I started feeling like when I lost, I was like, I got to get it back because I'm a sore loser. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm a sore loser. I hated to lose. So I was like, when I lost, I need to get that back.
You know, you go and it's the first time that you're going. What does it feel like when you win that first $100 hand at baccarat?
Man, when you first win, like in the beginning stages of my gambling career, right? When you first win, it was like, oh, this is really cool. I mean, damn, I feel like I can make a career out of this, right? Because you always think, oh, you're a top of the world. You're young. You're only like 20, 21, 22, right? You're like, damn, if I could just work a little bit and make most of my income off casino gambling, man, I don't got to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that also rewires your brain, and that's where it starts to get dangerous as well. I was in Philly. Yep. And then, you know how they have like the 3 big casinos, like Parks, they got, you know, the Rivers, they got Live. I would, you know, change. Like when I wasn't winning on one of them, I would go to the other one.
Interesting.
What makes it so dangerous, Rob, was that, you know, I would bring, let's say, I'd bring like $6,000-$7,000 in cash with me, right? And let's say I'm not leaving anything less than 5 figures coming out of this casino. I would lose, let's say 2, 3, 4,000. I would have like 2,000 left. I'd be like, damn, this casino sucked. I'm gonna go to the other one. Let's go down to South Philly and let's go to the one at Live. And then just sometimes I would pull that 2,000 to be like 14,000. I'm like, damn, I'm not coming for like a whole week. And me being stupid, I'm going to come the next day. I'd be like, nah, this 14,000 not enough. Because I'm like, oh, I got to pay for this, got to pay for that. You know what I mean? That's what makes it so dangerous, Rob.
Yeah, there's always an excuse to keep going.
100%. It was like an excuse that I keep on telling my brain, like, oh, it's not enough money for you. But in reality, I mean, 14,000 is a lot of money for like your average person. And you know what? For anybody. Yeah. Even if you are a millionaire or a billionaire. But I'll tell you something, Rob. There's a good quote. They say the only way you could be a millionaire in gambling is if you started off a billionaire.
Yeah. Take me through the last night that you gambled. What happened?
All right, I'll tell you the last time I was at a casino, and then the last official one was like just a sports bet. But the last time I was at a casino, What I do? So I took it was payday. I think it was like couple, like maybe like 2000. I just got paid from a check, you know. I can't remember what job. It's probably like TikTok or something like that. I took that out. I said, I was praying to God outside. I was like, please turn this check to like 10 grand. I need the money so bad. I need it so bad. So I went into the casino. I think it was like Rivers Casino or something like that. I went in. I was like, I'm not gonna lose. I'm not losing this money. Went in. I placed like $500 bet off the rip too. Boom. Hit that. That 500 turned to like 5,000, and I was on a streak. 5,000 turned to like 12. 12 turned to like 17. All of a sudden, after like 2 hours of being there, I had like back to like my original 500. And I said, you know what? This was the moment I realized that I was in one of the deepest parts of my addiction. Also, was when I pulled out the rest of my 1,500. I placed it all on one bet. I was like, nah, I'm not waiting to get back up to 17,000. I'm gonna put this 2,000 right now. Boom, I lost it.
Yeah.
Boom. I was on the table. I was putting my head down like this on the table. I was so stupid. And then everybody's just looking at me, like some of the people, like there was like a little crowd, like 3, 4 behind me watching, because they, 17,000 chips is a lot of black chips.
Yeah.
I felt like the devastation of like the people behind me watching.
Yeah.
But more so like me, I was just on the table like, fuck, man, I just completely blew everything. And it was like the walk of shame back to my car and everything. I didn't even know what to tell anybody. Like, it was just in complete silence. I was just in my car, like, in devastation, disappointment, suicidal, right? Not because you're depressed, obviously, but because you're just so stupid,
So take me into the last day that you gambled. You took me into the last day in the casino. Take me into the last gambling itself. Like, it's 5 or 6 months ago. What happened?
Yeah, so the last moment I gambled was just like a sports bet. I think I was betting on my team, like the New York Knicks or something, like a couple thousand. I think it was like 1,000 or 2,000. That 1,000 was going to turn into like 8,000. And I said, I'm going to stop after this if I win. If I win, I'm going to stop. I'm going to use this money. I'm going to pay off this. I'm going to pay off that. And let me just be clean. So I was watching. And then I think it was probably like an NBA playoff or something. It was probably like 5 months ago, something like 5, 6 months ago. Yep. We were in like NBA playoffs. Yep. And obviously I lost it. So I think what I did was I was like punching the wall or something like that, and then like making holes in the wall and stuff. I was just like so upset I had it, because as a gambling addict, you just know, like, you're so tired of losing. You just kind of want this little win, right? It's like if you're a Coke addict, you kind of just want to sniff the Coke and just feel better. You know what I mean? It's not even about the Coke no more. It's just like, oh, I got to get a win. I got to see a win, something in my life. And at that time in my life, man, I was like so deep. I was like deep in, like debt here, debt there, and whatnot. I didn't even want to work no more. At the time, I was with TikTok. I was working for TikTok, and even they were paying me a good salary. But even that salary, I was thinking like, man, this is like chump change for me, Like, but in reality, to somebody to have that job for that salary, for that amount of work, was a really good job. You could survive for sure, like an average life, It was just that last moment, I was like, man, I really have to stop. And that's when I realized I was an addict. And I think the first step to recovery is admitting that you're an addict, right?
Totally.
Yeah, because if you don't admit you're an addict, you're just like a person like, oh, I'm gonna go back tomorrow. There's nothing wrong,
So the bet loses, and you realize like something has to change. It's been too long going through the same thing.
And I was deep in. Like, I had maxed out credit cards. I was doing cash advances too. Not all, but I was doing it. Maxed out. You had like debt collectors coming, like calling me. I wouldn't even pick up, and now that you have months later, I changed my life around, and it was the most difficult thing that I've done, right? Trying to get back on your feet. Now I do own a business. I made the right investments during these times, but it was the hardest thing that I've ever done outside of quitting addiction.
So I struggled with gambling for 20 years. I gambled from the age of 18 to 38. It started out with poker, like most people that went to college in the early 2000s, I was inspired by Chris Moneymaker and the movie Rounders and, Party Poker and Paradise Poker and all that stuff. And eventually that would progress into table games and sports betting. And I literally, people ask me like, what'd you gamble on? I gambled on everything, right? Like there was definitely certain times where like, towards the end, it was all craps and Keno slots, but then there was the poker phase, there was a sports betting phase. And then, after 20 years, I had multiple rock bottoms during those 20 years, but it was more of an emotional rock bottom where I hadn't been to a casino in like five months maybe. And the last 10 years of my gambling, I lived in 6 different cities, had 20 different jobs, 12 different addresses. And the last city I lived in was Round Rock, Texas, outside of Austin. And after losing a big sports bet, I just I had this moment where, we talk about the fuck it phase with gambling, right? And I think usually the fuck it phase for me was like, after 4 or 5 phases before them, but I lose that bet and I was just like, you know what, fuck it. And I pulled up my phone, I said nearest casino, and it was 4.5 hours away. And I got in my car half drunk, middle of the night, and I drove from Austin to the middle of Oklahoma. And then I went on this 36-hour binge where about halfway through, I was like, okay, this is it. Like, I think, but if this is it, I'm going to go down swinging. And I lost every penny I had to my name. I borrowed from coworkers. I was sitting in my car outside Venmoing people, trying to get people to Venmo me. And then when the dust settled, I was sitting in this parking lot in Oklahoma, and I had this feeling wash over me that to this day I can't really describe, but I've learned in recovery that it was kind of one of these spiritual awakenings that people talk about, and I just was like, okay, you know what, like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I want to live, but I don't want to live this life anymore. I can't do it. The lying, the cheating, the stealing, just all of the chaos that gambling brought to my life.
Once you got to that casino and it lasted 36 hours, I think a lot of people have this conception of like, if you lost everything, it must have happened pretty fast.
Oh, yeah.
Were there times during that day where you were up? And if so, like, was it enough to have left? Like, what really was in your mind that day?
Yeah, no, I'll take you into it. So I remember I got there early in the morning. I still have videos on my phone. I have a video pulling in at like 5 a.m. that like Monday morning. I remember when I first got there, the drive up, I had these racing thoughts of like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Turn around. What are you doing? You've gone so long without, which, it was 5 months, but you've gone so long without gambling in a casino. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And, I just kind of blocked that out, ignored it. And I had sent my dad a bunch of money because when I moved to Texas, the plan was I'm going to save $50,000, and then I'm going to come home, start my life over. I'm going to go to Gamblers Anonymous.
This was after like 20 years.
This is like 19 years and 7 months into my addiction. I finally, after I was about to get fired from my previous job at MGM in National Harbor, I ran away to Texas and I said, all right, Dad, this is it. Like, because at this point, my parents, they stopped giving me bailouts. And the only reason they gave them to me all those years because I always paid them back. But at this point, they were like, we're all done with you. So I was like, all right, here's the plan. I know I shouldn't be working in this industry anymore, but I have this opportunity to make all this money, and I'm going to send it to you every shift, Dad. Like, I'm going to deal poker again, go back to my roots, and I'm going to send you the money. And so for 5.5 months, I did that. So when I walked into that casino in Oklahoma, in the back of my mind, and this is the sick part of my addiction, I always would be able to figure out the various safety nets in my life. So even though as I walked into that casino, I probably had a couple $1,000s in my checking account, I had a number in my mind of like, I am going to borrow as much as I can, knowing that worst case scenario, I have to call my dad with my tail between my legs and say, I need all that money back. So that's the sick part, right? So it's like the 5 months that I sent my dad money. I walked into that casino that night with a number in my head of like, technically I can lose 10 grand and it's I'll be able to pay everybody off.
So when you went to borrow the money, you were like, I can take more because I can pay it back. I can
Exactly.
And then did it eventually get to be more than you could even pay back?
Well, so no, which was the only good thing about it. But so my first like 8 hours was just me on a slot machine with my money. I got up, I got down, I got up, I got down. And then it was like the middle of the next day when I finally lost it all. And so for the final like 20 hours of those 36, it was me going out to my car, taking a little bit of a nap, sending a Venmo request, or I had templates on my phone, messages where I would just plug in people's names with lies of why I needed money. And I would send 10 of those messages out, and then I'd get 2 back. Each person sent me 200. All right, we're back in the game, $400. I'd go lose that. I'd come back in, do the same thing. I did that over and over and over. And then it was like the next day after that, it was somewhere in the middle where I was like, okay, I think the spiritual awakening was starting while I was still gambling, where it was like, this isn't even fun. Like forget about numb. I've been numb before in casinos. This last time I was a zombie. I felt nothing. All I felt was like, I can't stop, yet I know no matter what I win, I ain't leaving. And so it wasn't until I had exhausted every single possible resource. And luckily, because if people kept sending me money, I would have went through all that money my dad had.
Like a good friend of mine is in recovery from alcohol, drugs, and gambling. I like to defer to when they speak because, as someone that's not in recovery from drugs and alcohol, it's like if I say gambling's the worst addiction, obviously I'm biased. But when he says it, and there's all those addictions, he says the one I struggled with the most was gambling. It throws people for a loop because you think like detox, you're coming off alcohol, you could literally die. Like your body could shut down. You could be overdosing on drugs, like shaking, convulsions. Like these things look visibly worse. The thing that makes gambling so dangerous is that, 2 weeks later, when that person's done detox, they still have a lot of recovery ahead of them. They still have to do the work for the rest of their lives, but maybe they have a savings account. Maybe their family's still there. Maybe they still have their job, right? 2 weeks later with the gambling, you could be looking at 5 times your annual salary in debt. You didn't go through the shaking, the convulsions, but now you're looking at not only the recovery work you have to do, but the fiscal work, the financial work to get back to it. And so what makes a gambling addiction worse is that there's no stopping point. There is no natural stopping point, and it's the only addiction where you convince yourself that more of the addiction is the cure for the addiction.
Exactly.
I mean, Adam, if I told you, dude, all we got to do right now to stop being alcoholics is get out there and pound down a handle, you would, even if you wanted to do it, you would look at me like, what the hell?
That's not how that works.
But with gambling, I could say, all I got to do is win the Powerball.
Yeah, we just got to hit this 8-teamer. You pick 4 teams, I'll pick 4 teams. We hit this, we're good. Yeah. I mean, that was the story of my life for, and that was the thing too, is that, I've heard it been called like euphoric recall, where it's like, I could go to the casino 20 times. All I need is that one winning session, and that's all I think about. That's all I remember, right? Or I remember the losses, but I have no idea how many there were. I had a rough month, and then when I finally looked at my bank account, and I could not believe how much I lost, right? Like I thought I only lost 2,000, but it was 22,000. If you're honest with yourself, that's first and foremost. Be honest with yourself first, then honest with those around you, honest with people that you need to come clean with. Then be open, right? Be open to the feedback. Be open to different types of meetings. Be open to different kinds of pathways. And then you got to be willing to do it. You got to be willing to put in the work. I've always been honest with myself about my recovery, and I've always kept my finger on the pulse of my recovery. And I can remember telling my sponsor early on, like, hey, this is weird. Like, I just gambled for 20 years. Why do I not want to gamble? And depending on the day or depending on like what we talked about that day, but he'd basically just be like, listen, just keep going. Like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like don't overthink it, right? Like just keep going. And that was the thing. And that's what I tell people all the time. It's like, I understand that you're talking to someone who was in your shoes and then did it for 20 years. And I'm trying to tell you at 21 years old to not do it. I get it, right? But all I can tell you is that this There's no other ending to this, right? Everyone's stories is different. It all ends the same. So if you're honest and open and willing, once you start feeling that I don't have full control of this thing, be honest with yourself, be open, and be willing to do the work. And I think you can give yourself a shot.
Do you remember the first time that you got involved with gambling?
Yes, definitely. It was in college. Gosh, I'm getting old now, but probably 12 years ago, something like that. I was worked at a bar, and they had video lottery. And after my shift, me and a few buddies split our tips, sat down at the lottos, had a couple beers, and that was kind of the first experience I had with gambling, and that's kind of where the ball started rolling.
And are those like slot machines in the bars? Is that what it is?
Yep, there's probably 8 of them in there. Just people would gamble waiting on their dinner, or just come there exclusively to gamble.
And tell me what the experience was like. How did you feel that first time that you were doing it? What was the conversation like with friends? Like, what was the vibe of it?
Yeah, I think I was unsure, obviously. All the lights, all the buttons, didn't know what button to push. I think definitely at that time it was just good vibes, having some fun. I can remember seeing the lights, seeing the sounds, and having fun, for sure.
And then, since you didn't gamble until you were in college, like probably around 20 or 21, like what was your interpretation of gambling before that point? Had you been around it at all, seen it online? Like, what did you think about gambling in general?
I didn't really have a strong opinion at that time. I saw it from afar at the restaurant or the bar that I worked at, but I didn't have a experience within my family, my friends, so I never really had an opinion of it. There were the regulars that I'd see there quite often and maybe would question that or, look back at them a couple times during my shift just to see what was going on. But it was very neutral at that time. And obviously the more I did it, the more I was around it, the more I understood well, at that time, the good, but with time, the evil of it all.
Yeah. To try to frame it like your feelings about it before and after, like when you would see a regular playing, what did you think of them? Did you think like, oh, like what the hell is this guy doing? Or was it like, oh, he looks like he's having a good time?
Yeah, I'm sure there was a little stark judgment initially, just because, again, I was uneducated from it. Looking back now, obviously, I would have a million times more empathy for that person. But yeah, I think probably just a little bit like, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? And I learned that question the hard way.
Yeah. Well, take us to what happens next, right? So you give it that first go with your friends and you have a good experience with it. When's the next time that you pick it back up?
Yeah, probably the next weekend, similar instance. I recall winning that first time, so I was like, well, why not? So yeah, it was just a slow, gradual, do it here and there. It was for fun, make a little extra money, go out into town, buy beers for the boys, that kind of stuff. And then it was a slow progression, but just over time, I would do it more.
Sure. And pointing something out that you just said there, so make a little bit of extra money. When you first did it, was there a thought in your head of like, oh, I can make money doing this? Or was it kind of like a fun thing? Maybe it was a mixture of both. Like, what were you thinking?
It was a fun thing for sure for the, first 5 years probably of it. But yeah, then after that point, I started to, dip into grocery money and try to just, find ways to make it go further. And yeah, I definitely had that thought of this could be not an income stream, but, extra money to make life easier, life softer. I recall at that time going to casinos on my lunch break, going across the street, getting back late for my lunches. That was kind of the first time I was like, this is the route that I was planning on going down.
Interesting. So you're going out and you're spinning on the lunch break. What's the thought during the day? Because I used to gamble during like my work days, and I would think like, man, I can make double what I'm making today if I can just get a couple hits. Was it something like that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I was single at the time. Just kind of keeping up with the Joneses already at a young age, unfortunately. Yeah, the rush of it, I think, getting away from work. I was in a very professional space, so you always just had to be this picture perfect person. I I think I was just chasing some sort of rush, excitement. I remember going to the casino across the street and coming back to work and depositing the cash at the bank I worked at, right? Just kind of felt slimy at the time, but kind of funny to look back at, I guess. So yeah, just something to get me out of the day-to-day routine, get my mind away from work. And yeah, I felt like I had direction in life, but I had no direction at the same time.
The debt started accumulating. The budget, if there was a budget, is starting to deteriorate. What is your solution at the time? What do you try to do to fix the problem?
Yeah, just keep gambling. I remember, say I had $100 to go to the grocery store. I'd stop at the casino. I'd be like, okay, well, perfect. Well, if I double this, I'll have $200 for groceries, and that'll make everything easier. We'll have a fuller fridge. That'll free up more money for this bill at this time. But would always end up happening that I would lose that $100 at the casino before going to the grocery store, spend $40 at the grocery store with hardly any groceries, come home, try to make an excuse for that to my wife. And then that's just where I would slowly just start falling behind and more behind, till eventually it hit a point where I would spend all the money we had for the month for bills, go into the state of panic and try to wing it on the fly.
What's she saying at this point? Like, when you're coming back with only $40 of groceries, is she believing the excuses? Is she starting to get frustrated? Like, what's life like at home?
She didn't have any reason not to believe me, I think, at that time. Obviously, she did behind the scenes, but she didn't know that. She gave me the benefit of the doubt. She's amazing, loving, kind. So yeah, she didn't have a reason not to believe me until obviously all this stuff came out of the closet. Probably a little level of frustration, like, what took you so long? Well, there's a long line, all these little things. But yeah, she didn't have a reason not to believe me. And we spoke about it before, I was in banking. She just trusted me wholeheartedly. That's something obviously that I've felt a lot of guilt about in the past, is just taking advantage of her trust in me to handle things. Yeah, at that time, no, not really much frustration, just thought it was what it was. Money was tight because we have a kid or kids at that time. So yeah, she didn't have any reason not to believe me.
Then I guess it kind of leads us naturally to the end of the gambling, right? So we imagine that there's a long pattern of, trying to win money to cover the expenses that were building up, to cover the debts that were falling behind. Where do things really hit their peak for you in terms of the gambling?
Yeah, I guess for a lack of better terms, it was time to go all in and lay all the chips out on the table. One last big push to try to hit big and solve all the problems. So went all in, lost all of our money, couldn't take out any more loans, credit cards, that sort of thing. And yeah, that led me to making the worst decision of my life and embezzling money from the bank that I worked at, and just kind of a pure state of panic and desperation. I thought it was the only solution. I said to you last time, I would have done anything but tell somebody at that time. So yeah, that's where it led me. And yeah, that was the rock bottom of it all. And I'm thankful to have been at that rock bottom to slowly climb up back to the top. Suddenly, like, this precious time with my children and my wife and my family was all dangling to be taken away from me. All these things that I would miss, these milestones I would miss. So that was the hardest part of that 6-month process, we'll call it, of the uncertainty of what was going to happen. Finally, the day came. It was November 25th. I woke up. I think court was in the afternoon. Again, pretty calm, but just ready. All my family, my parents were in town. Everyone was going to meet us at the courthouse to be there to see what was going to happen. I was still unsure. I was still hopeful with probation. But again, I just didn't know. There was so much uncertainty. got to the courthouse, met with my lawyer. There were some people from the bank that I haven't seen since the day I quit, so that was really challenging to see them, and I was just anxious and scared of their judgments. Not that I spoke to them really, but just them even seeing me, like I just hated it. I was like, I don't want to be seen. Like, I don't want to be here. Can we go? Like, can we just leave? So yeah, I went up to the courtroom and it was judgment time. And then finally he says, I'm going to grant probation. And I remember just tears in my eyes. Like, I could almost feel my family behind me crying too. Like, thank God. Literally, thank you, God. Like, all these worries of things that I was scared to miss out on suddenly like washed away.
You know, how did you first get started with gambling? Because that's why we ended up here today.
Well, gambling and problematic gambling are totally different things. Gambling started for me when I was a young boy. I can remember learning how to play blackjack with my dad, betting on local sporting events with the guys down at the field, playing cards, nickel dime, probably penny nickel dime back then, and just having loads of fun being part of something.
Yeah, man, we just discontinued the penny, so I think you're dating yourself here.
Well, I might do that a few times during this podcast.
That's all right. So in the beginning, you know, you're growing up, you're gambling kind of the same as my experience, actually. I played a lot of like family poker games. It was nickel and dime by then. We moved on from the pennies, man. Inflation hit a little too hard. But so, you know, it was fun at first, right? It was something that you did with friends and family.
Absolutely. It's a complete bonding experience. And when you have that bond with friends and with family, it creates something. You know, we don't know we're even gambling. We're just being part of something, and we're just playing cards. We don't know if there's any potential harm in doing that. All we know is that we're hanging with dad or hanging with the family and playing cards or hanging with your friends. It's such a strong bond development that is promoted quite often. And sadly, we know now, and if you go back with clarity, you would not probably encourage those behaviors because it's proven that early exposure could lead to problematic gambling behaviors in the future.
Yeah, it always does kind of like strike me when I say like, yeah, I mean, my family spent time in Atlantic City to go to dinners, that could have maybe been a problem looking back. But at the time, it's just like, this is normal, right? This is what we do. And I don't think that a lot of parents are even worried about gambling the way they are with drugs and alcohol, right? Like, I think that maybe it's a bigger stretch for a parent to say, like, here's a glass of wine with dinner than it is for them to say, let's play a little bit of penny nickel poker. Would you kind of agree?
I would definitely agree. And you think about the holiday scratch-offs, you know, the scratch-off at the Thanksgiving dinner table that's presented to everybody at the table, whether you're 5 years old or you're 50 years old, you're getting that scratch-off on your table. But only the adults are getting the glass of wine or the beer or the drinks. Absolutely.
What made the gambling problematic? It sounds like it was fun.
Yeah, so that was up until age 32. So at age 32, I began experiencing gambling at the casinos as a real place for me to be. Like, I felt like a different person when I went to the casino. As you go to a casino more and start spending money and winning and you know, contributing to the funds at the casino, they want you back. You know, and they started sending solicitations for concerts and free dinners and shopping sprees and all that. And, you know, it got me to go back all the time. My wife, well aware that I'm going to these casinos, encouraging the trips because they were giving away a bike or an iPad or, you know, a necklace at Tiffany's. Get yourself there and then come home. And of course, I would come home with the giveaway and the lies. How much time, how much money, how much money I lost, how much money I won. There was nothing but lies. There was never a truth about my gambling experiences because now I was going alone. And now I didn't want people to come with me because I knew that I couldn't gamble the way I gamble if people are around me. So, and then, you know, the concert giveaways, my kids wanted to see Pink or Jonas Brothers put on the most amazing concerts, and I had tickets, and my tickets were good, and the kids wanted to go. So I would be encouraged to get the tickets to the concerts. And I played right into it. I can't believe they're giving away this many tickets. How are they doing that? They must really be desperate. I came up with every manipulating story that you can possibly imagine to convince my wife that, yeah, we should go. And then we would take the kids. We'd go out for dinner. We would go to the concert, and they would go to bed, and I would destroy everything that I was working towards. Everything meaning my mental stability, my emotional stability, my physical health, my relationships, the trust that I was building with people. I was shameful and fearful. I mean, it started to come on really fast. And I was hiding. I was hiding everything about what was happening with gambling. It was an unsustainable pathway. And that got worse.
Yeah. In addition to like going to the casinos and spending more money, spending more time, was there anything else that was happening right around this time that made the gambling worse?
Yes, and thanks for taking that with it was going to get worse. It got worse when I'm going to date myself again.
Have at it.
So I got a little diskette in the mail, a little, what is it called, 3.5-inch diskette. Not the 5 1/4. I do remember those, but I'm not that old. And I got one in the mail, unsolicited, didn't ask for it, and I put it into the side of my computer. Now, you don't even know what that is because they don't have those slots in the computers anymore. But I put it into the side of my computer, and within 60 seconds, I was exposed to the world of offshore internet casino gambling. It was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Whenever I could gamble, I would gamble. I'll give you an example. I would get up, take a shower, get dressed, back again, aging. I would put my suit on, kiss my beautiful bride goodbye and the kids, and go to my office. I'd walk in my office door, say hello to my staff, go into my office, close the door, and start gambling. And that was my life for 9 of the 13 years of destructive gambling.
Wow. At what point does it reach the point that you start to do what you did next with client funds?
I can't remember specifically the first time that I tapped into funds that I was borrowing to pay back the next week. If I had the ability to put air quotes in, that's what I did. I borrowed money so many times with the intention of paying it back, knowing that I could never pay it back, because what we realize is that there's never enough zeros at the end of a win.
No.
Never enough zeros. And and I did win plenty of times. And that would be dedicated money to go back and do it again. It really got out of control, so much that I had no idea about the magnitude. I personally had no idea of the magnitude that I was doing until it was shown to me. And I say that because, it came to the point that it was unsustainable. There was an investigation happening. Didn't know that. I guess I had gut feelings that the end was coming. And I ultimately got arrested. I got arrested on July 15th, 2013. My last problematic gambling bet was July 12th, 2013. And that's because I received silver bracelets as a gift. And what's amazing is I knew it was over, but I also knew it was the beginning. If I had the opportunity. And I actually said to the DA detective, "Thank you." And I'm telling you, I can remember her face, and she's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Because it had to end." And I had no idea what was going to happen from that point forward. I had no idea. And it was hard. It was hard. It took me that long to know. I stopped 30 times gambling before that, 30 times that I can remember. Never again. I am not doing it again. I would delete all apps, close all accounts, and commit 2 weeks, a month. Once I got my financial head in order, if you will, not that I repaid all those loans that I was taking, I had money in my checking account. So now I can go back into it. And I went right back into it because I never addressed the problem. I never addressed what the underlying problem was about gambling addiction. Sadly, with five children, I had no idea how to get out of this box. None. And I wasn't worthwhile. I didn't deserve them. I didn't deserve my wife. I didn't deserve anything that I had. So why be here? And it took me to attempt to complete suicide 4 times.
Was this following the arrest or before the arrest?
There was actually one time before it, which I don't even count. So those 4 do not include it. That one time was driving home from the casino that I frequented, going 130 miles an hour on 95 South, just waiting for the moment to flip the car because I didn't know how I was going to fix what I just did at that casino. And then there was 4 other times post-arrest.
Wow. And what were you charged with?
Embezzlement. Yeah.
Did you end up serving time?
I did. It was 2 years of, I'll call it defending my case. There wasn't a lot of defense being given, but I ended up getting a sentence of 4.5 to 13.5 years.
Wow.
In state facility, not federal.
Tell me a 30-second version of the day in your life at the worst of your gambling versus 30-second version of your life, a day in your life today.
This was my life. I would get up, shower, I think I did this before, and go to my work and gamble all day. I'd come home, have dinner with the family, and have to go downstairs to my work desk and complete an assignment. Everything I said was golden. Okay, I can remember. And I hit a major jackpot on computer. Major. $32,864. I will never forget it. And what would a person without a problematic issue do? They would stand up, yell, scream, jump up and down, run upstairs, tell their family, and plan the next major vacation. I didn't move. I kept it going all night long. That was pretty much every day of my life. I don't know how I made it because I just needed to gamble all the time. Today, while I'm working a lot, I love it. I wake up every day. I smell. I feel. I'm emotional. I live life. I'm here for my wife, my kids, my family, my extended family, my community. Normal problems in life, they're not going away. Regardless of whether you're engulfed in a gambling addiction or not, life is going to be lifing. That's the way it is. But I love dealing with life.
Tell me about the first time that you gambled.
Wow. We're going back to the Stone Ages there, Rob. I guess the first time I gambled was at a racetrack, not surprisingly, given my age and, the gambling landscape at the time that I was growing up. I happened to be from Long Island, a town called Elmont. And if you've heard of Elmont, New York, it's probably because you know something about horse racing, because Elmont is the home of Belmont Park that runs the Belmont Stakes every year.
Why didn't they call it the Elmont Stakes?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe they didn't have a good marketing like you do. So, but in any event, some of my friends and I from high school would, after school, catch the last few races at the racetrack and, make a few bets. They weren't terribly, vigilant about, the age of the bettors at that time. And that's when I got exposed to gambling. And I'll tell you, at that point, it was just entertainment, something to do. But I do recall looking at a number of people that we in our youth called track bums. They were the people that, usually older guys that looked like they hadn't, shaved in about a week. They had their racing forms spread out and they would study them as if they were studying for, an exam in advanced statistics, trying to pick the winners. And I raised this because at that time I would look down on them. I would say, man, this is their life, every day going to the racetrack, betting money, probably losing, and never thinking that I would have a problem that would be very much connected to the issues that I'm sure many of them had.
Yeah. What kind of games are you getting involved in?
Yeah, great question. Blackjack was really my game at the time. I really liked it for several reasons. I liked it because I thought I knew, the whatever skill was involved. I read books of, when you're supposed to take a card or not take a card and so on and so forth. I liked it because I liked sitting at a table with others. Either if they were my friends, that would be the best thing. If they weren't my friends, I would like to just chat with them, kid around with the dealer. It was a social thing. Have a few beers. I liked the action. I liked that feeling that I got every time a dealer turned over a card. It fed my need for dopamine. And that went on for years. Unfortunately, the more I played, the more I eventually lost. The more I lost, not only did it create financial harm, but the more I had to hide my losses and lie about my losses and lie about where I was. And that, that started that whole, I guess, double life. That's how I could describe it. And, fast forward, because I know that this podcast has limited time, and given my age, it could take months for me to go through every stage of gambling. But I will tell you that, to me, one of the pivotal moments that, looking back, I didn't realize at the time, but it was really a pivotal moment when I changed forms of gambling. I got to the point where blackjack no longer interested me, and I couldn't understand why. It sounds odd, right? I did it for years, but it was also a point where my gambling harm was so great financially, the shame of what I was doing, how I was hiding, that I really transitioned from purely an action gambler, as you know, the gambler that wanted that dopamine, that loved the risk taking, that liked the social piece to gambling, to just using gambling to escape from basically the stress and the harm that gambling caused. As I said, I was a trial lawyer. I was in private practice, and I was the manager of my firm's trust accounts as a lawyer. Now, you talk about crossing lines, right? I got to the point in my gambling history, I guess. I don't like to say gambling career, but, in my gambling journey, where I depleted my own resources to gamble. There was nothing left. I depleted opportunities to borrow money. I had every loan that I could possibly take out. And the next step was getting money illegally to gamble. Never thought that would ever be me, right? But I'll tell you real quick that it happened very, very clearly, and this is something that will always be in, something that I remember. I was at a conference, a lawyer conference in Las Vegas, with a number of other lawyers that we partnered with. And we were there, and the first night I was there, I gambled and lost everything. And when I say everything, I mean the money that I had with me, access to money. I had 3 more days that I had to spend in Vegas and not let the people that I was with, the lawyers I was with, know that I had an issue. That obviously there was there were a lot of professional or business reasons to hide it, outside of just the shame that we all have. I didn't know what I was going to do. I certainly, in my own mind, was not going to come clean to my wife and say, look, I need you to wire me money. I'm not going to even be able to pay for a cab back to the airport. I remember going back to my room, and lo and behold, I was on my computer and discovered that I could access my business accounts and my personal accounts because we used the same bank and transfer money between accounts. That, as you probably know, and I know lawyers know this, is a big no-no. You can't commingle funds. And I said, look, to myself, this is the only way I'm going to be able to get out of this mess. And I transferred a very little amount of money just to get me through it. And I was shaken to the core. It was really the first time that I felt I did something that was so unethical and jeopardized my career. And I got back home, transferred the money back, and said, I pray that, nobody ever discovers this. I will never do this again. And that commitment lasted probably 4 or 5 months until I was at a casino one night and lost everything in the first 15 minutes I was there. I wasn't ready to leave. When you gamble like that, you're not there to gamble for 15 minutes.
Right.
And all of a sudden, in my mind, that night in Vegas, I thought about, there is a way for me to get money to gamble more. And that's how it started. So I did it again. And the more I did it, the easier it was.
Yeah.
As shameful as it was, that shame slowly dissipated, to the greater, I guess, cause in my own mind. And that is, man, I found a new source to fund my gambling.
Well, so you knew it was wrong. You knew it was unethical. You knew it was illegal. But did you think it was stealing?
No, of course not. I'm not, thieves steal money. I'm not a criminal. I'm saying this tongue in cheek.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's
exactly what I was. I was stealing money, but in my own mind, to justify these behaviors, I was borrowing it.
Yeah.
And the next time I settled a big case, I would pay the money back. Nobody would know the difference. It would all be okay. I mean, that's the fantasy thinking of somebody with a gambling addiction.
Take me into the day that you got caught.
So it was a Friday, July 24th, 2015. It was a hot summer day in Wilmington. And it was the day that I knew auditors from the bar, the state bar, would be coming to my office to audit the accounts. Up until now, I knew, like, for several weeks beforehand that was the time that the appointment was. And this was a random audit. It was not as a result of any suggestion or sign that something inappropriate or was going on. It was, I knew eventually my accounts would be audited, right? Again, another example. Logically, I knew I'd get caught, but I was playing Russian roulette. And at that time, I knew I was going to get caught, but I still continued to gamble because that's what the addiction did. It caused me to forget about the harm, to not consider what would the consequences. So the auditors came, and all of a sudden, reality hit.
Yeah.
And I asked them to leave. They were like, "Why?"
They just got there.
Yeah. No, they were there. They were there actually for a couple of hours.
Gotcha.
Because for again, in my own fantasy thinking, I thought, well, maybe they're not going to catch it. I remember, I think, one of them came in and questioned something, and I knew that was going to be the start. And at that point, I asked them to leave, and they said, we'll have to report this. I said, report it. We're done. And I got in my car, and I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. I was shell-shocked. And I just sat there for a while and thought about a plan that I had in my own mind for probably 2 years before that day. And that is the plan that I had when I got caught. Because I knew that it was going to happen. And there were 3 options in this plan that I had. One option was to come clean. Option 2 was to end my life. Option 3 was to leave and go to a country that, and I literally, went on and researched this, to go to a country that didn't have any extradition agreement with the U.S. and start this new life.
Where were you going to go?
Now, mind you, Rob.
Yeah.
This is all happening 3 months before I turned age 60. So I'm not talking about somebody that can start a new life at 25 or 30 or even 40, right? I went through in my mind how my wife and how my children at first were going to receive the news of what just happened. And then ultimately, when I disclosed all the things that I did for years that they didn't know about, basically telling them that the husband that they have, my wife had, the father that my children had, this was all something that I created in terms of who I was, the values that I had, the type of person. And I thought, you know what? If I end my life, sure, they would grieve, but they would, once they found out all the harm and what I did to them, they would, the bottom line is they'd be better off without me. That's a pretty common, mental state that somebody that's suicidal, experiences, justifying the actions. And for some reason, I if you want to say it, maybe it was my higher power. The thought of my mom came into my mind, and at the time she was 88 years old, and having a Jewish mother, the connection between Jewish mothers and their sons, right?
Yeah.
I knew that if I either took my own life or went away, never to be discovered again, I would be taking her life as well. And that's what did it. And so I went home and waited for my wife to return from work. And she found me basically in bed sobbing, saying, "What's wrong?" And I started to tell her. And that's when I began, the efforts of disclosing my behaviors and really starting my journey of recovery. I refer to that as my weekend of hell.
Growing up, it was a lot of poker. I remember in 2003, I believe, I was watching the World Series of Poker.
Sure.
That was my first introduction. Almost just amazed at the game.
Yeah.
Around that same time, I remember going to Vegas at the family trip to wasn't really into casinos, but we bought back a set of poker chips just as a souvenir.
Sure.
And that's when my family like learned how to just play poker for fun.
You would have just been like 9 or 10 years old at the time,
Yes,
right?
I was at 10, 10-ish. 10, almost 11 at the time.
Sure. So when you're watching the World Series of Poker, you're a 10-year-old, like, what are your thoughts about what you're seeing? Are these guys like heroes? Like, is this game the coolest thing? Like, what are you thinking?
It was, I think it was just the strategy and the math involved. And like the psychological portion of the game.
Sure.
Of being able to bluff and all that. Like the one memory I have in 2003, Chris Moneymaker had like an unbelievable bluff. He was an unknown, and that's just like stuck with me. Like, I want to make that play.
Yeah.
And then there was one night where I'm up, like, so I play Blackjack and I get hot. I put $100 into Blackjack, and I think I'm walking away with like 2,500.
Wow.
I just got a hot streak.
But what were you thinking during that? Like, after it was done?
Okay, now the money's real. This is awesome. And I am looking back on it, I should have recognized. But I didn't, so I immediately took out the money. I put $1,000 into my budget of like, this is my gambling money now. And I'm labeling in my budget gambling money. Like, it's not entertainment anymore. Like, this is my budget.
And it's 10x
and
it was before.
Exactly. And like, but I didn't lose anything. Like, I went 2,500, so I'm like, cool. And then I spent the other 1,500, and I think I did like smarter investments.
Sure.
So like, cool. That $1,000 I put in that budget lasted me 2 days.
From the day you sign up to the day that the 2 days that you blow through $1,000, how long was that period?
That period of time is probably like 2 weeks now.
2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay. So you come back from this trip, you're feeling depressed, you turn to the gambling for something to do, for some entertainment. Within 2 weeks, your budget's 10x'd.
Yes.
And it's changed from entertainment to being about making money.
Yes.
All in 2 weeks.
All in 2 weeks. At that point, I realized, I blew that $1,000. I think I put in 1,000 more.
With the thought being,
I can recoup it. There's a point like in that wave that I was up like $5 or $6 grand, but at the end of those 2 weeks, I'm down $2,500, and I realized, okay, this is an issue. So I actually take my debit card. I tell one of my closest friends about it, and I give them my card. I'm like, this is the issue. I need to hold on to my card for a while, and I don't play again for another 9 months.
9 months.
9 months.
So in the period of time where, your friends made aware that you're trying to stop gambling and you're staying away from it, how are you feeling? What are the thoughts during those 9 months? Is there
I
urge to go back?
immediately jump back. Jump back to my normal self.
Really?
So like, I'm not thinking about it anymore. Like, it happened. Since I joined the military, I was in a very good financial state now at that point. So I was like, okay, I lost $2,500. It sucks, but whatever. And I move on. For 9 months.
Sure.
It's all normal. Until the fall of 2023 is when it starts going downhill. So around Halloween of 2023. So some background, from October to January, I have about 8 significant death anniversaries in my life. So when Halloween hits, like, that's when my seasonal depression starts to come out. Halloween hits, I start getting depressed. Some events happen at work, and I end up lapsing. And at this time, I'm also 2 years sober from alcohol. So I've never been a problem drinker, but I decided in 2021 I would just stop as an experiment. So in fall of around Halloween of 23, I decided to have a drink, and I decided to gamble again on the same night.
And there's lots of negative emotions swirling around this time. Is the thought, I want to feel better, let me have a drink, let me gamble? Or is it like, I'm bored? Like, what was the thought that led to
the thought was, like, I'm going through a distressing time. I just want to feel better, and let me just gamble. I've had very few out of body experiences, and I think that was one of them. Of I'm not even thinking, like, I hosted a Halloween party, everyone left. For every reason, I had the urge to go back. So December 4th, 2023, I attempt suicide. It was after I actually won.
It was after you actually won.
Yeah. And that's what surprised me. Like, it was, I got hot streak, I lost a little bit. I'm still profitable. I'm like, I can't do it anymore.
I've never heard that. To be fair, that caught me completely off guard.
Yeah.
I don't quite know what a good follow-up question is. But like, wasn't winning the goal?
The winning was the goal.
So
But,
why weren't you happy?
it was like, I knew I'm being taken by this. I knew if I bid more, I wasn't going to get it all back. So it was like, okay, I'm in a good spot, but I wasn't satisfied anymore.
Wow.
It was like, I don't have enough to keep playing $1,000 hands. While it was fake money, I saw that money in my account. So it's like, even though I'm almost broken even, it's like I was up big, and that felt like a loss.
So because you weren't at where you once were with the gambling
Exactly.
profit, it didn't feel like you were okay, even though objectively by
it was
financial
okay.
measures,
Yes.
it was okay.
Yeah. But it's like, no, even though it's fake, I lost like 20 grand.
Wow.
And that's how I'm thinking of it. And it's like, okay, so I attempt to take my life. Surprisingly, like, alcohol was not involved at all. I was like, the past few weeks I was drinking and gambling, but that night I wasn't. I was completely sober. So I text my friend. I don't even remember why I texted him. I obviously set off red flags. Because the next thing I remember is like making an ibuprofen smoothie, drinking it, and then I wake up in an ambulance. So I don't remember who saved me. I can only guess it's one of my coworkers, but I actually, like, I honestly don't remember who saved me, who was like the first person in my house. So I wake up in an ambulance. I'm in the hospital. I'm just out of it. Like, I'm super depressed. I'm mad that I didn't die. I go through 2 weeks in the psych ward, knowing that when I get out, I'm still okay. My first night in the psych ward, so work doesn't know where I am. I feel like my friends abandoned me now because I didn't know who saved me. I just woke up in an ambulance. And no one's calling or trying to find me. So I ended up calling my brother. He was so calm on that phone call. I was like, hey, I'm like in the psych ward. And my family knew I was gambling, like, because I would update them when I won. Yeah, so they knew it bad. They might have saw it get to this point, but they knew I had to go through my own journey before I realized. But anyways, my brother is the one that kind of starts to handle all my care at this point. So he's in communication with the military and like where I am and all that. He plans to come out for Christmas. At this point, I'm getting discharged from the psych ward the week of Christmas, so he comes out for a week to make sure like I'm not drinking or gambling. My uncle comes out around New Year. When I go to my IOP program. So he introduced me to that. And as soon as both of them are gone and I'm at the house again, I go back to it.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm now 2 weeks in the psych ward. Almost took my life. I was able to stop because I had family around and I couldn't gamble in front of them. But as soon as I was now alone, I'm still in treatment. I'm in my full-time 5 days a week therapy now.
Yeah.
And I have my first lapse in therapy.
If you made it all the way through, thank you so much for everything that you've done to support this channel, for engaging with this video today, and hopefully some value can be taken from it. If you've watched all these stories and you're motivated now to quit gambling, then I want you to check out this video next to do just that. Let's keep getting better together, one day at a time.